Welcome to this explainer. When it comes to translating between English and Arabic, we're not just swapping out words like some kind of simple linguistic matching game. We are actually decoding entirely different realities. When we look at two languages with such drastically different roots, we aren't just moving vocabulary from one column to another. We're navigating completely different ways of organizing the world around us. Let's dive right in. Imagine you're translating a totally innocent English phrase, something like patient owl. To us, an owl is wise, right? It's calm, observant. But if you take that literally into Arabic, oh boy, instead of quiet wisdom, your audience is going to sense impending doom. This right here is what we call a pragmatic mismatch. Because of deep, deep cultural roots, translating the exact same animal creates a totally different psychological effect. To an Arabic speaker, the owl actually carries deep negative connotations as a harbinger of bad luck. So you thought you were calling someone wise and patient, and you literally just cursed them. Yikes. So how do translators actually survive these traps? Well, to bridge these massive gaps, we turn to the heavyweights of translation theory. Eugene Nida pushes for something he calls dynamic translation. He argues you absolutely have to maintain the psychological impact. That means you might have to swap that owl out for a totally different animal, maybe a camel, just so the target audience feels that same sense of patience. On the flip side, we have Peter Newmark. He's all about semantic translation, which sticks much closer to the structural boundaries and the exact context of the original text. It is a constant, delicate balancing act between the letter of the text and the spirit of the text. All right, moving on to Section 1, structural headaches, decoding compounds and verbs. When we compare the underlying architecture of these two languages, we hit a massive clash. See, English loves to just infinitely stack words into compounds. You can just keep piling them on, like first-class ticket office customer service assistance clerk. But Arabic is highly resistant to that kind of word stacking. It requires entirely different, super precise mechanics. It relies heavily on structures like the idafa, which is a specific genitive construct like pocket money, or it uses strict noun-adjective pairings. You can't just throw nouns together, you actually have to build clear relationships between them. So when a translator gets hit with one of these massive English compounds, they basically have to become a forensic detective. They execute a strict three-step recovery process. Step 1 is syntactic recovery, literally reading backward to deconstruct the modifiers and figure out what is modifying what. Step 2 is subunit breakdown, dissecting that long chain of nouns into smaller digestible chunks. And finally, step 3 is idiomatic translation, rebuilding the meaning using those embedded Arabic structures we just talked about, like the adafa, adjectives, and prepositional phrases. And then, oh man, we have English phrasal verbs. These are an absolute headache because they literally don't even exist in Arabic syntax. A phrasal verb is when you mash up a simple verb with a preposition or adverb, like take off or break down, to create a completely non-literal meaning. To translate these, you first have to figure out their formal, one-word Latinate substitution in English. So before you can even touch break down, you have to realize it actually means collapse or failure. But Arabic has its own traps too. It uses highly specific verb-preposition pairings that are incredibly rigid. Take the root verb ata. If you pair it with the preposition for to, it means to arrive at. Pair it with, and it means to bring. But if you pair it with on, the meaning flips entirely to destroy. I mean, just swapping one tiny preposition changes the whole outcome, from someone arriving at your front door to someone literally destroying your house. Okay, we've survived the grammar. Let's escalate to Section 2, decoding culture, allusions, and binomials. When we get into cultural allusions, translation scholar Ritva Lepahalme tells us we have to split the text into two distinct parts, the frame and the scene. The frame is the precise, visible wording sitting right there on the page, like a famous quote or a historical name, but the scene? That's the underlying cultural reality or historical episode that actually gives that frame its power. To translate an allusion effectively, we literally have to decode that visible frame to reconstruct the hidden cultural scene for the brand new audience. So, when faced with a really heavy cultural allusion, like a historical or religious proper name, translators have to make a highly strategic choice. They can retain the name, maybe dropping in a footnote if it's going to cause a cultural bump for the reader. They can replace it with a recognizable name in the target language to keep the emotional impact intact. Or if the specific name distracts from the core message, they can just completely omit the reference and boil it down to its underlying meaning to preserve the flow of the text. And it's not just the heavy historical stuff. Even fixed everyday word pairs, what we call binomials, completely flip. In English, we say sweet and sour. That's locked in, you'd never say sour and sweet. But Arabic naturally reverses that exact same concept to sour and sweet. If a translator stubbornly sticks to the English word order, it instantly sounds clunky and unnatural to the Arabic ear. Moving right along to Section 3, Unwritten Rules, Collocations and Similes. This is where we see the true chaos of collocations. Those are the habitual ways words just naturally pair together. Think about the English word heavy. We say heavy rain, and we say heavy smoker. But you absolutely cannot use the exact same Arabic word for heavy in both of those cases. Heavy rain translates to abundant rain, but a heavy smoker translates to someone excessive in smoking. Believe it or not, the English adjective heavy actually demands over 30 distinct Arabic contextual equivalents, depending entirely on the noun it happens to modify. So you can see how translators are constantly dodging these massive linguistic obstacles just to make two words sound natural together. They have to deal with the loss of attitudinal meaning, where positive or negative vibes just don't transfer. They face totally arbitrary structural disparities, like we just saw with the word heavy. And of course, they have to navigate that tricky pragmatic mismatch, where a literal translation triggers a completely different emotional response in the target culture. This cultural shift is probably most obvious when we look at similes. Similes are so deeply tied to the environment and culture of a language. Consider this incredible shift. An English speaker describing a really hard worker will say they are busy as a bee. But an Arabic speaker, they'll naturally say as active as an ant. If you just translate busy as a bee literally, the target audience will probably understand what you mean, but it completely loses the natural, stylistic punch of their own cultural idioms. All right, bringing it all together in Section 4, the translator's final test, bridging the cultural divide. As our translation theorists so beautifully capture, being a true translator is not about just being a walking dictionary. It's about being a fully bicultural detective. You're not just dragging words across a page, you are constantly decoding the visible frame of one world to meticulously reconstruct the hidden scene for another. The absolute ultimate goal is to ensure that the target audience feels the exact same intellectual and emotional impact as the original reader did. And hey, speaking of bridging worlds, if you want to keep mastering complex topics and decoding the fascinating world of education with us, make sure to subscribe and follow the Robo for Education channel and sites. We've got plenty more deep dives coming your way, for sure. I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder today. If the structures, idioms, and allusions of a language actually shape how we perceive the world, then when we translate a text from English to Arabic, are we just swapping out the words on the page, or are we literally rewriting reality itself? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.